Hi, good evening. My name is Jay Rothman. I am the host of the show. Welcome to Real Men, Real Talk, Live. Welcome back tonight. My name is Jay Rothman. Welcome to episode number 97. Evis Love Heath, welcome to the show this evening. Coming in from Australia, he calls home to the land of down under.
Thank you for having me, brothers. Missing our brother Jeff Fonsano tonight, but we'll keep him here in spirit.
Yes, we will. Josh Richer, welcome to the show. You call Southern California home. Welcome tonight.
Great to be here. Yes, we will miss Jeff tonight, won't we? Wow.
Well, Jeff Fasano is actually in the second day of a photo shoot in Nashville. He's enjoying himself. He's having fun actually photo shooting a band that he learned about in 1977. They're called Little Feat. And he last night he came home from the photo shoot, and I could just tell from his energy how charged up he was to not only photo shoot the band, one of his favorite bands in the 70s, late 70s, but obviously he got to meet two of the founding members and connected with them and more on a heart space. And so he was flying high last night when he came home from the concert. And he was really disappointed that he can't be here with us tonight. He said he was torn. I told him just have fun, just enjoy himself. He knows where we'll be next week. We'll be right here. Nothing's going to change. We'll be waiting for him. So we miss you, Jeff Fasano. But tonight is all about tonight's topic, episode 97, is about from victim mentality to victor reality. And as I want to just take a moment here to welcome our viewers and guests, if you're joining us live streaming tonight, coming in from Facebook, YouTube, and on LinkedIn, welcome to tonight's live streaming show. As you all know, we do not edit. We do not rehearse. We just show up on real time, on reality time, and come from our hearts. And if we mess up, well, then so be it, which just shows that we're just showing up as our authentic selves. If you should hear something that you like or love that resonates with you, please drop it down into the comment section, and we'll do our best to acknowledge you. If you have any questions for us, we'll do our best to answer as many as we can see coming through the stream. And if you should hear something that you like or love, please tap your love button on your monitor and light us up. And so tonight's topic is one of those beautiful ones. It's about from being a victim mentality to rising above to a victor reality. And there's so many pieces to this, but one of the highlights that I definitely want to make sure we touch on is how do we unlearn the ancestral victim mentality to live in victor reality. But in this moment, Ev, since you're in the top shelf with me or top row, I'm going to invite you to kick us off, warm us up, and get us going on tonight's topic.
Why me, Jay? Why me? Why has it always got to be me? Why has it happened to me?
So what did that little video mean to Mini-Me? What was that about?
Well, if you could see, there was actually one version of me. I was holding my ground. I was standing loud and proud. The other version of me, which some might even know as the ego, was down on the knees, playing the victim. Why me? Why me? Why does this always happen to me? Sound familiar, brothers and sisters? Well, look, tonight we're going to be diving in deep about this victim mentality because for me, particularly on the people that I help transform along their journey, it's probably right at the crevices of what we should be really focusing on, being able to work forward into what we want to see out here in the real. So when we come from that victim mentality and try and make this victor reality, how do we do this? Where does the victim mentality even come from to start with, my brothers and sisters? Is it time that we actually become aware of what victim mentality is it time for us to actually start taking responsibility for some of those things that within our life that we feel powerless from, that we feel like we have no control of, which for me is really, I feel, at the root and the foundation of what we're talking here tonight, my brothers and sisters. So for me, I'm going to help dive in deep, particularly about where this victim mentality has crept into my life and how I got myself out of it, but also some of those tools that really revolve around self-care, self-improvement, and why it's so important to get us out of this victim state to this victor reality.
Beautiful.
Yeah, man.
I'm curious tonight.
Let's go in.
I mean, you nailed it right out of the gates, Ev. It's that control, that fear of not having control. When I was in my deepest victim state, it's after my startup crashed, and I owed a whole bunch of money to everybody, and I was just left angry and bitter. And this one of the companies we hired to program our software actually ended up becoming, or we found out it was a big Ponzi scheme, and they took us for $100K. And so I had reason to be angry, I guess, right? I mean, anybody would feel that way if they were part of a Ponzi scheme, and somebody had. So I had a face to my anger, but that anger carried out throughout my entire life. And I felt like I was losing control. I owed all this money to investors, and everything felt like it was crashing down around me. But I mean, I was like, I remember one time I was driving down the street in Burbank. I had the windows down because it was a nice day, and the guy in front of me like slowed a little bit, and I yelled some obscenity and slammed the roof of my car. And some woman on the sidewalk like looked over at me horrified that and I forgot that the windows were down. But it just permeates our entire lives, and I was just angry and bitter at everything. And I started buying into this belief that life was happening to me. And that's when things get really dangerous. And we don't think we have control in those moments. I couldn't control the guy that took all our cash, and I couldn't control owing all that money to the investors. But we got to break this cycle of thinking that we don't have control, because what we ultimately have control over is our everyday thoughts. And that's where I was going wrong. And that's what I was doing wrong, was I was constantly dwelling over this guy that had screwed us. And I was constantly dwelling over the money. And that negative mindset really made me look at the world with a whole new filter. And it was, everything was happening to me. And it wasn't until I was able to flip that and realize that life is happening for me, that I was able to make a change. But one of the conscious things that I did during that time, I was reading a book by Gabby Bernstein at the time, and she had mentioned something about anger to love. And I did a intentional month of reframing. Every time I was angry, I would have to catch myself in that moment and either think about compassion, or if somebody cut me off in traffic, I would remind myself that I don't know where they're going. They could have a pregnant wife in the back seat. I don't know. But, you know, that quick snap to anger all the time was me being the victim. And so we do have more control than we think. And we do need to break this cycle of thinking that life happens to us.
Yeah, brother.
You know, Josh, I as I'm listening to you, it just struck me that I just want to take a moment here to regress and take a step back. It was just a couple of 24 hours ago that we were here last week. And last week's show was a pretty heavy show. It was well, it was on how we navigate through low moments. Some refer to as dark night of the soul. It can be depression. But for the viewers that were with us last week that engaged and all, I would just like to invite you just to take a moment here, just to share what's happened for you since that last show, because it appears as though your vibration that was down here has risen. And I'm just curious, without going too deep, what would you say was if there was any takeaways from your experience of showing up last week with us as we held space with you and for you, and you navigated through, some sharing of some real truths, some difficult moments, and from your perspective, what's changed, what's shifted for you?
Well, and thank you guys for holding such amazingly loving, beautiful space, and thank all of our viewers for your amazing comments, your cheers, your thoughts. I'm so grateful for all of them. I heard all of them. I read through all the comments, and so thank you all. And it was just, there's no way to really snap yourself out of it. So it was just moving through the process in a kind and loving way with myself and just being patient. And I had a trip planned a few days ago. And so I continued on the trip, even though I wasn't feeling 100%. But that's okay too. And the trip was out in nature and it was beautiful to get out. And that, I think that helped snap me out a bit. And then, time. Energy has to move. It never is permanent. And so it just was patient and allowing it to cruise on through. But any takeaways? Nothing major as of yet. I do know, and it's interesting to state that I think I've been a little reckless on this show. And I know that's going to sound strange to you. And I haven't even talked to the guys about this yet. So here you go. Real Men, Real Talk Live. We set up this show to be wildly vulnerable and share everything. And I think I was a little reckless with my feelings and a little reckless and not protecting those soft parts of Josh inside. And I think I just expected all these months, week over week, to just sort of tough it out and be, ultra vulnerable 1,000% and wear my heart out to all of you guys. And what that did was it kind of left me not feeling safe. And so, yeah, when I opened the show last week, it was me setting boundaries for the show, and that there are parts of me that keep just for me, because that's my safety. That's my place where I feel protected and I feel like I'm not completely exposed to the entire world. And that's a pretty far, I mean, you guys see what we do on the show. We take it pretty far, but this is us learning. There isn't a show like this anywhere in the world, and there isn't a roadmap to how to be insanely vulnerable in front of tens of thousands of people every week. So we're learning. And I think part of my emotional down was me being a little recklessly vulnerable here, and that soft place in Josh needs to feel safe too. So
Ev, what do you make of that? I mean, from your perspective, what I'm always conflicted with is that it's the foundation of our show is about us showing up as real and sharing our experiences, sharing our moments, our pivots, our shifts, our defining moments in our own life, as well as those that we may be involved with, whether it be in a relationship with or any type of relationship, if I may. And so, how do we? Josh? You may have the answer, you may not. I don't know, but how do we filter through what we are willing to share and what is off limits that we're? And is it just come down to in the moment, just tapping into your inner truth and saying, you know what, this is what I'm going through, but I'm not ready to put it out there in the universe. And are we okay with that?
Look, I think it's always important, brother. And, as always, brother Josh, thanks for showing up again tonight, man. But I think it's always important, too, for our brothers and sisters to also know that it's quite important to keep a little bit of mystery to yourself. My story, mystery. So if you're not comfortable in sharing, like some of the stuff we've shared, 97 shows deep into Real Men Real Talk Live, that's a part of you that you may have to self-reflect on. You see, when I opened up tonight and I talked a little bit about what's really at the root of this victim mentality, it really is that avoidance of responsibility of your life. So if you're unable to be responsible within your life and take ownership, I'm not just, let's list down a few of these things and ask yourself these too, my brothers and sisters. Do you feel you're responsible for your feelings? Do you feel your responsibility at the moment for your actions, for your behavior? Do you feel that your responsibility for your choices you're making in your life, for your decisions that you're making? Are you responsible how you're showing up daily at your work? Are you responsible for showing up to your family, your peers, your loved ones? Are you responsible for solutions to your problems within your life? I mean, we could keep going all night, my brothers and sisters. And really, until we get to that point, I feel there's probably that little bit of all of us that we may hold back from sharing with the world. And we generally put up that mask. We put up the armor, aka the ego, to protect ourselves in the big bad world. But when we were able to show up and, like I said, take ownership for just some of those things that I've even just listed there, then we actually start to realize, my brothers and sisters, that if we were in a victim state, we had those problems within our lives, to get to that victor state, that if we created our problem, then on the other side of that must be the solution. You see, we've been ingrained from day one, my brothers and sisters, to have our solutions from the outside and the external world. We were taught that. But we put a lot of judgment, we put a lot of blame, a lot of shame into our lives when we couldn't reach on that other side of our pocket and find a solution. So then we go into these depressive states, then we go into these anxiety disorders, then we go into some of these things to self-numb ourselves, to really distract ourselves from sharing what we've shared, for an example, on a Real Men Real Talk Live. So I think really at the depth of what you're saying there, brother, and, correct me if I'm wrong, for me, with this whole victim state, it could have easily allowed you to slip into that victim state. But my question is to you, brother, what has kept you out of that victim state, no matter how much all of us have been through within our lives? What's one thing or a couple of things that you can share with our brothers and sisters that's really kept you out of that victim state to be able to go forward on your journey?
For sure was daily gratitude practice. 1,000%. 1,000%. It was to get, and Ev, you brought up so many beautiful points. We have to remember too that when we stay in a mental state for a while, when we stay in a certain mental pattern, we're training our brain, the neurons, to wire that way. So when we decide that we want to change, you're now fighting your body's wired biology. So it's going to take time, and we got to be patient with ourselves. It's not instant. It's not going to be an overnight fix, and it's not going to be a light switch aha moment where all of a sudden tomorrow is just sunshine and roses. So we have to be patient with ourselves through the process and realize that the process is rewiring all that negative thinking that we've been doing as well. So when we do something like a daily gratitude practice, we are appreciating what we do have rather than being angry about what we don't, or bitter about what we don't, or bitter about the things that have happened to us. We are looking around and saying, wow, I have so much. Instead of this victim mentality where I live without, we are now living with all of these amazing things. We have a roof over our heads. We have electricity. We have things that other people in the world would kill for. And we have this every single day. I would guess that most of us watching this have that. At least you have to with internet. So we have a lot. And when I started doing that practice every day and appreciating the smallest things, stopping and enjoying some beautiful flowers next to the sidewalk as I parked the car, you're wiring your neurons. You're growing in new pathways in positive ways. And it's that repetitive motion of doing that day after day after day. It's going to help biologically get you out of that negative mindset. So gratitude practice is...
It's a power tool, no doubt. Yeah, it's a power tool. Huh, Josh? It's a power
saved my
tool.
life.
Yeah, me too. I want to switch gears here real quick, gentlemen. And for those that may be joining us on live or replay, picking us up. And by the way, I want to take a moment here just to congratulate the two of you this evening. Last week, we hit on episode 96, an all-time high viewership of 48,600 plus viewers between last Thursday and tonight. So, and that does not include, that's just a Facebook viewership. So thank you for those that are new tuning in. If you are tuning in for the first time, welcome. We'd love to know where you call home, what city, state, or country you reside in. And we hope you enjoy and pick something up that helps change the trajectory of your own life. But coming back to tonight's topic here, how do we define the true essence of a victim mentality, or what is the true essence of what is a victim versus a victor? Who wants to dive into that real quickly?
Tell us, Jay. I'm gonna knock the ball back to you, my friend.
Well, brother, even I'll ask you, Jay. We're talking about victim already straight up from the intro.
Yeah.
What is definition to you as a victor?
Well, I wasn't always a victim. You know, the interesting thing is that I do believe that many of us are not aware that we're even showing up in that victim mentality or the victim role. And I think that can go back to, it always goes back to our past. But the question is, how far back does it go? And is that victim mentality, is it even ours? How many of us actually inherited that from our ancestors? And it can go back not just to mom and dad, but it can go back to great grandparents. It doesn't mean that it's yours. We may have been tagged with it. We grew up in it, and that's the only way we know how to show up in it. And so for me personally, I didn't really see myself as being living in victim mentality, but life's challenges and opportunities that presented itself in my earlier years, leading into my 20s, 30s, and 40s, eventually wore me down. And although you've heard me acknowledge, I had tremendous success in that part of my life that I call my career, I eventually felt like a victim. I eventually felt anger, resentment, feelings of injustice, all of the, what I call toxic emotions that I couldn't really put words to. It was just this inner feeling that had gripped me, mind, body, and soul. And by the time it had a grip on me, it really contributed to my health decline. eventually leading to medical conditions. And it wasn't until I hit my own rock bottom and had my spiritual awakening leading to becoming the man I am today. I didn't even know that I had evolved into a victim, but I had. And so for me, that's the long answer. The short answer is that when you live in a low vibration, meaning that you're always either living in lack, or you are always angry, or feel resentment, or feel like someone's got something that you don't have, they don't deserve it, you deserve it. There's just so many aspects of victim mentality that can come into play, and we can easily get triggered. It doesn't have to be by physically being in a relationship with someone. It can even come from the TV set. It can come from a movie set. It can come from reading digital media. It doesn't have to come from me just being in a relationship with a woman, or a relationship with a friend, or a relationship with my family members. It can come from many different aspects. But as long as you get agitated and irritated and feel like no matter what you do, it's never enough, no matter how you show up, you're never enough, that's a victim mentality for me. And how I think, Ev, you asked me, how did I go from victim mentality to VICTOR reality? The first step was I had to have awareness around it. You can't change until you really are willing to look in the mirror and really assess how you feel about yourself, how you feel about others, and how is your relationships with other people in your life. And when I was able to truly be honest with myself, perhaps for the first time in my life, I was now around 54 years old and change. So began my transition or pivot from being a victim to learning how to live more as a victor. And there's freedom in that, because when you're no longer a victim, it's about taking accountability for your own inner peace, for your own happiness, for your own serenity, for your own health, mental, physical, spiritual.
Yeah.
And that for me was the pivot. It was when I realized that it wasn't working for me anymore. And I think the part of myself that I hated the most was that feeling of being a victim. And how being a victim, how it translated into your experience in being my friend, or your experience in being in a relationship with me, whether it be business or personal. So what do you make of that, Josh? Is that hitting home in any way?
Oh, big time. I was right there with you, Jay. And I feel you right now. I feel how painful that was back then, and how just sort of dark and negative it was. And you both brought up a really great point. And since we don't have Mr. Fasano here tonight, I'm going to bring out some visual aids to keep things interesting.
Oh,
So here's the conundrum that we're caught in. This little circle is you and your little bubble, right? Well, we believe that the world is happening to us, and that all of these things from outside are causing these feelings. So Jay was just talking about all the feelings that he was having. We believe it comes from the outside. And so therefore, if it comes from the outside, then we are caught in this belief that the only way to feel better is from the outside. Through drugs, food, shopping, alcohol, friends, family, these things make us feel good. Well, they make us feel good temporarily. But the problem with this outside of us thinking is that we have no control. By believing in this here, we have given up all of our control. It is all outside of us. So this ownership that Jay is talking about, well, we got to start realizing that we are perpetuating this. And when we are able to take that within ourselves and say, oh, wow, I am making excuses. I am saying this is not my fault. I do have this negative self-talk all of the time. We can now, once we take ownership, we are taking back control of our feelings. And what that means, and this is the really fun part, is that now we can create our own good feelings too. And we don't need the outside world. We are now sort of like bulletproof because we can feel good whenever we want because we're making the good feelings and we are back in control. So by believing that our problems are coming from the outside, we've actually given up all of our control to feel good. And that's where I was stuck. And it sounds like you were too, Jay.
I first of all, a couple of things I want to point out. One is I love your stick figures. That's although I spent a career doing restaurant design when it came to like natural drawing. My people look like your people, Josh. And I'm saying that I'm not saying that in a critical sense. I'm saying that that's my truth. Although I did thousands of restaurant design, I'm not by nature a natural artist. I know how to. I used CAD to do it. But what stood out to me besides the beautiful people that you used as an example there, and I felt like it was a relative of me that I was looking at. But on that last diagram that you showed, you notice what the foundation of that picture is. It's not at the top, it's not at the left, or it's not at the right, but it's the foundation of which Mini-Me is standing on, and it says take action.
There you go.
And it's also underlined for a reason. That's
There you
great,
go.
Josh. Thank you. And what that's about is that if we wait for somebody to show up and rescue us from living in that victim mentality, it's not going to happen. There's no one that can rescue us from that. We have to rescue ourselves.
Beautiful.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, man. 100%, brother. I love your diagrams, man. They are lit. They are lit. But what really stands out for me there as well, man, and you hit it right on the head, and obviously what Jay was speaking about as well is that we've just been programmed and we've learnt, from a lot of old conditioning and programs to seek some of these solutions based on the external world. And the thing with me, that difference between a victim and a victor, and I think we should do a whole show on it, is something called resilience. And I think in the current environment we're living in as a collective, with everything being thrown us from the outside world, external, to get you to react to your life and be a circumstance of your life, there's no wonder why so many people are in this victim state. To me, victim state is the most demoralizing state of being anyone can be in. Because what you had circled there too, brother, some of those feelings, some of those lower vibratory frequencies of blame, guilt, shame, those waters don't move any ship. So of course we're not going to be owner of our own ship if we're stuck in those particular frequencies. So what we're saying here, my brothers and sisters, we need to be aware whether we're in this victim state from day one. From that point, to me, like he had underlined and like Jay just reinforced, we've got to identify action within our lives to actually change the circumstances that we're living in. Now, we're not out here saying you can't feel sorry for yourself every now, brothers and sisters, because we've all been through that. And look, on my last 4, man, I went straight into that particular victim state. I felt sorry for me. It was all about poor me. But then I took responsibility on how I was turning up into that relationship. So with me taking responsibility and ownership on how I was turning up in the relationship, I brought the power back home. I was no longer entangled to the connection anymore. I identified some of the actions that I could take to start stepping forward. And then the last thing for me, my brothers and sisters, I changed the story. You see, we've got to change the narrative. We've got to change the story of why we may have been putting ourselves into this victim state. So how can we possibly even get through some of those things that I've just shared and the brothers have shared if we're not looking after ourselves? And so to me, I think if we went in this direction and started talking about why it's so important to be looking after our body through self-care and why it's so important to get into this victor state to allow us to live the life that we want to live, not based on the outside world and everything that's been thrown at us, because believe me, brothers and sisters, it ain't going to stop. You think there's not going to be the next best thing thrown at you to control you? Start waking up, brothers and sisters. When we take that power back, we can start changing the story. We change the narrative. So the first things first, we identify the actions to move forward once we become aware of victim state.
Beautiful, Ev.
I love that. Well, Josh, what do you want to extrapolate from that? What stood out that you can resonate with?
The story. Change the story.
Yeah.
Can you share with us, Ev, what the story change was for that big moment for you?
Well, I took responsibility for how I turned up into the relationship. What caused her to walk out that door? How was I turning up in the relationship? It was with me with my busy hat on. I may have not been paying attention to someone's emotions and feelings. Or I may not have been creating the safe space for that energy to be able to express and communicate itself within the environment. So obviously now, through all of that awareness, through my time in solitude and stepping out on country, as I always share with people, I've been able to come to that self-realization. So really at the base of all of this, my brothers and sisters, is self-development work. It's self-improvement. And that's why I feel, like I said at the intro, so important what we're currently living in as a collective to really become aware whether we're in victim state or whether we're living our best life, my brothers and sisters.
And wouldn't you, so, I mean, I know how it was for me, Ev, when I had to take ownership. It sort of sucks at first.
Hey, man.
You're sort of like admitting all these things that you've been trying to either hide or you know, we tried to, I don't know, in a relationship, in your example, you know, we tried to do all of these things to make sure that we were being attentive when we felt like we weren't, you know, well after the fact. But yeah, I guess I'm curious, like how that felt for you, Ev, and what you did, you know, what you did with that. Because I think a natural thing for us to do then is once we take ownership, it's like, oh crap, a lot of this was my fault. And the next, I think, you know, easy step could be being hard on ourselves and being critical. And that's not part of this process. Part of this process is love and forgiveness and compassion, right? So how did you navigate through taking ownership of your parts of the breakup and the bad, but not dropping into guilt, shame, blame, because that's just going to make it all worse.
Well, like I said, it was definitely the story. But for me, right at the foundation of it were the emotions that were attached to the story. So when we can really become aware and identify some of the emotions that I felt from the breakup and the separation within itself, then I was able to transmute those emotions to how I wanted to see my story play out. So I realized even some of those emotions that I felt that put me into a little bit of blame, shame, and guilt, they were some stuff that I learned from when I saw the stuff that I saw as a child, brother. So when I used to see the breakup between my mum and my dad, there was obviously the victim state that went in through my mum's side. So it becomes a survival mechanism if we're not careful. So a lot of it really becomes a state where we can either be that reactive to the circumstance or the event, or like I said, being proactive, where I actually turned up, I showed up, I knew my part in what had gone down, and I was aware, like I said, of the emotions that were attached to it to not allow me to fall into the victim state itself. So it's really key for me in all of this, my brothers and sisters, is that, yes, we become aware of it, but then really identifying the emotions that lay behind the victim state itself. Because we get into that victim state, my brothers and sisters, we're so flooded with the stress hormones, like we've mentioned in shows before, and we're so flooded with the cortisol that we aren't even aware that we're in that mentality. So my thing is to you, brothers and sisters, how I changed my story is that I knew that I had the solution if I had the problem as well. And it was as simple as that, brother. Well, I should say, Jay, it was simple but not easy.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I love the dialogue that's going on right now. And as I'm listening, as an active listener, which is something I wasn't always so good at, what I realize is some of my clients have heard me use the term the 3 A's. And really it comes down to awareness. The big one is accountability. And then the third one is action. If we just focus on that, once we have awareness that how we are showing up for ourselves and for the people in our life, whether it be at the office, in work, or it be at home in our personal relationships, that the only way to break through victimhood or victim mentality is to take those 3 A steps: awareness around it, accountability, and action. And, you know, sometimes action could mean doing nothing. That is an action step. Just understanding what it is that you should be doing in that moment to either relieve the pressure or to help you shift. And of course, there's another A. There's a 4th A. It's called acceptance. And acceptance is that we can't bring everybody with us that has been living in the rabbit hole around being a victim. Meaning, if we're in a relationship with a friend, a sibling, a parent, a partner, even a child, our child perhaps, we cannot bring them with us. It's their soul journey to choose to stay living in a victimhood or to remove the veil so that they could become free, become a victor. And I share that. I'm speaking. I'm not here to preach. I'm not here to drop the mic. That's not how I show up today. I'm speaking from my own experience. And as an individual that has love in his heart for people he cares about, it's not my responsibility to carry people with me out of that victimhood mentality. It's their pain threshold to walk through. It's their pain threshold to say, I'm sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. It's their pain threshold to look in the mirror and realize that they're suffering physically, emotionally, and or mental pain. And then say, what role do I play? How do I lift myself out? And I'm just curious, what do you guys think about, do you think it's possible to live in a victim mentality, even if you have had a successful career, even if you have wealth, financial wealth sitting in your bank account? Do you guys know of anyone that shown up in your life that has some piece around money, financial success, yet they still show up in a victim mentality. I guess where I'm going with that is, does financial wealth, is that a prelude to you stepping out of being a victim, or does that have nothing to do with it at all? What do you think?
What do you reckon, Josh?
I'm trying to scan my life and see if I know any wealthy victims. I mean, I'm sure.
Yeah. I think what we've got to understand too, like from the side of victimhood itself, some people may look at victimhood as beneficial within their life. And what I mean by that is that, you know, they get that added attention, they get that added bonus. So, you know, whether that's in the form of wealth, they could have got to that wealth playing victim within their life.
Well, that's interesting, Ev. You just struck a nerve in my spine here. I spent about 3 decades paying attention, observing one of my peers that was in the same industry I was in, doing the exact same job I was doing. And this individual always showed up. His MO for sales and marketing was presenting himself as what you just described. He always was a victim. He was always sharing his drama with every sales call, with every client, with every pitch, with every sales close. And he sold based on people feeling sorry for him. And you know what? He got a lot of sales.
It worked.
He had a lot of loyal clients that were always in his corner rooting for him to climb out of that victim mentality. But what ended up happening was that it took its toll, and he ended up not only suffering with very, very large obesity. He was stuffing. He was using food the way I did. I'm not judging. I'm just sharing an observation. But that progressed eventually to cancer.
Yep.
So it caught up. It caught up with that gentleman. Now, for me personally, there are certain, you know, what role do we play as a friend or as a family member when we are aware that someone in our life consistently shows up as a victim? And if we have done some work, some emotional healing, some mental healing, some even physical healing, at what point in a relationship do we potentially ask the question, is this good for me? How can I stay engaged in a relationship when you are no longer engaging in that type of behavior? And at some point, does it become tiring to remain in that type of relationship?
Yeah.
And then you have to evaluate or assess and say, is it good for me? Can I love them from a distance?
There you go.
And sometimes it could be our own relatives. It could be children. It could be parents. It could be siblings. At some point, we have to look at it and ask the question, is it good for me? How does that energetic exchange impact me? Is it hurtful? Is it harmful? Or is it helpful?
And you've got to be careful of whether you're fueling that victim state as well.
In other words,
by just giving your attention, you're actually fueling that victim to be even more of a victim, which in their eyes would be actually a victor. You know, because on that side, how far was he up in the hierarchy of the business, Jay?
Sales and marketing. But I clearly worked with senior leadership in my role, that there was definitely some victim mentality happening there too. Now, again, I'm speaking at that time, I was a closet victim. I lived in the closet. I did my best to hide it, to come across as a strong, positive leader. But inside, I had a little secret. Inside, I felt like a victim. So there's that dual reality, and that's tiring too. Because for how long can you keep wearing that mask?
There you go. And when
Yeah.
you're up at that level, I mean, if you're passing on particular tasks for other people that are so-called below you in the hierarchy, like we're saying through this whole show, the avoidance of responsibility in your own actions and behaviors can be passed down.
Mm-hmm.
So 100% can someone be a victim and wealthy?
Yeah. And it's real easy to blame the others
There you
beneath
go,
you
man. There you go.
for your missteps. Yeah, I've seen that too from bosses where they have literally in front of me thrown me under the bus to avoid blame and
taking
not take ownership.
accountability. Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There was literally I was on a massive show. You guys know it. I can't say the name to incriminate the guilty, but she was the set decorator on a giant HBO show. It was HBO's biggest show at the time. And she had made some decisions. And then the director comes on set. I was out there dressing the set with her in the morning, and she had told us to do things a certain way. Director comes strolling in with all the shooting crew. We've been out there since like dark 30. You know, we're dusty. We're covered with. It was a Western. Now you guys probably know the show, but anyways, the director comes up and goes, "This is all wrong. This isn't what I wanted. This isn't what I said I wanted." And he kind of goes off, and she, in front of all of us, there's like 5 guys who just have been up since 4 a.m. doing all this work. And she said, "I told the guys not to do that. I don't know why they did it this way. This is all shit. I'm sorry. We'll fix it. But this is their fault." And we're literally standing there listening to her throw us under the bus in front of 100 other people. So yeah, accountability.
I want to come back before, we're coming up about 8 minutes till the hour, gentlemen. But I do want to say, when I asked that question about, are you aware of relationships where the individual has some financial wealth or success, yet still shows up as a victim? And it was really an unfair question, because before we could even go there, what is the definition of financial wealth? How much wealth do we need to have to where we see someone as having financial wealth? And it's a setup question, and I just want to give my perspective on it, and we're going to move on. I don't think it has anything to do with how much money we have. It has to do with what you were taught and how you feel about yourself and what life experiences you've gone through. Just because you have money in the bank doesn't mean that you're not suffering as a victim. And how many of us create a story around that, well, I won't feel the way I feel about myself once I make it, once I have some money in the bank. And then we get the money in the bank and we still feel that way because it wasn't about the money. It never was.
Yep.
It was how we were taught in our homes how to show up, and or how we were influenced by friends or relationships outside of the home and how they show up. And in that energetic exchange that takes place.
Yep.
I've met many people overseas in my business travels in third world countries. I never, in my brief exchanges with strangers I've met, I've found that there's a sense of calm. They may be poor. They may not have financial stability or wealth, but they have this inner peace. They never, ever communicated or conveyed to me that they live in a victim mentality. Josh, to your point on the opening, many of them smile with gratitude in their heart. just for me locking eyes with him and saying hi, saying good morning, saying hello. As we approach the hour, I want to invite each of you guys to. We've shared some tips and tools on how to break through, but if we can just kind of wrap it up, maybe sharing some final thoughts, Josh, on how we can elevate out of the victim mentality to embrace victor reality. What your diagrams are beautiful tonight, but just a couple of quick hits for those that may have missed that in the moment in the show. All right, Josh.
So
is good.
we gotta when we take ownership of all the bad, we are now able to own all the good as well. There we are.
So it's I guess I want to ask you a question real quick, and then we're going to move on. Is it? How much do you think of it is just because really what I'm taking away from what you put together there is a lot of it is mindset. It's the stories we create, as Ev said. It's the way we speak to ourselves. It's how we see ourselves. It's how we hold on to our past wounds, traumas, pivotal moments, and experiences in our life that we just keep. It's like we have this running inventory list, this stack that just keeps getting higher and higher. And that inventory is us holding on to our past experiences that had some pain attached to it. And that pain, then we just dial it into us feeling like a victim, like we've been had.
Yeah. And I think along those lines, beautiful awareness on the mentality, Jay, was that many people could take their situation of growing up as their crutch, as their reason for not succeeding. And that's where I was talking about earlier, the life happens to you or happens for you. Whereas someone who was born with less or had some adversity to fight through when they were younger had to build that resilience, like Ev was talking about, had to build that strength, had to build that power. And I'm sure that gave them a lot of wonderful things in their life. I'm sure they use that fuel to, either be great with it or use it as an excuse. And so we can look at the things that happen to us in life. We could reframe that mentality that you're talking about in these happen for us. And there are wonderful tools and things that we've gotten from this as well. Instead of just using it, if we use it as an excuse, it's a dead experience for the rest of its existence. It gives us nothing in return mentally. So it's that mind shift for sure.
Beautiful. Ev, what do you got? You got a minute here, buddy.
I was going to give you a quick dreaming story. We're on full moon in Virgo, so I've got to quickly honor the moon. And one of the local stories here, to cut a long story short, is about Punabung and being the moon and Punau the sun. And I was telling it to a brother on country yesterday, and why it's so important, particularly on this full moon, as we try and let go of some of these darker emotions within our life. And Punabung never had attention within its life. The moon never had attention because the sun was given all of the light to the local people here, the Awabaka people. And the people would dance and do their corroborees here in the land down under only to the sun. And unfortunately, the moon just felt like it was left out. It actually went into victim state. And that Punabung, the moon, it would go night, it would come through the day, it would come back during the night and shine the light, but still wasn't getting the attention. Till one day, that Punabung, the moon, let all of its tears out and form one of our local lakes here, which is called Lake Macquarie, just around the corner. And until the moon saw its own reflection in its own tears and was able to express some of those darker emotions that it wasn't getting from those local people, it couldn't find its own self-love. So for me, my brothers and sisters, to finish off tonight, just on that little short story on Punabung and Punau the sun, My feeling is for you, my brothers and sisters, is to fall under the 3 frequencies of self-trust, self-acceptance, and self-love. And on that note, peace be within.
Wow.
I hope I got a minute there, Jay.
Yeah, well, I wasn't really timing you. I just turned it over to you and trusted that you were going to wrap in a minute. You said self-trust,
self-acceptance,
and of course self-love. And you nailed it, Ev. You know, for me, it always comes back to the same thing, which is when we can be honest with ourselves and look in the mirror and accept the truth that in this moment, I don't like how I'm showing up. I don't like how I'm feeling. I don't like how I'm talking to myself, and I don't like how I'm talking to other people. And my relationships are strained or they're detached. And in that moment, I have a choice. I can continue to blame those people for making me feel the way I feel, or I could take ownership. And ownership for me is about showing up and growing up. And that to me is about taking accountability and responsibility and then going into full surrender and asking myself, what is it that I need to do to help myself? And then invite your ego to take a seat in the back of the car so that you take over the control of your life, your higher self. So you have an opportunity to come home, to come home, to come home. Because that's what you deserve. It's your birthright. There is nobody or nothing that's preventing you from coming home, to become a victor, to have that become your reality. The only thing stopping you is your own ego, your own fears. Step in so you can step out as your authentic self. Self-care can be your gateway to stepping out of victimhood. Self-care is your gateway to learning how to like yourself and eventually falling in love with yourself. And on that note, I love you, brothers.
Quick special happy birthday to our sister out there, Katrina May, too, sister.
Yes, yeah, I saw
nice.
that. Happy birthday, sister.
Happy birthday, Katrina May. We love you all the way from Arizona, Australia, and Los Angeles area, and of course, Nashville, Tennessee. We look forward to having Jeff Fasano. He will be back with us next week on Real Men Real Talk Live. Please share it out in your social media community. If you heard something that you like or resonated with you tonight, we love you, viewers. Keep showing up for us and give us a reason to show up each week to talk about things that matter in men's life and women's life on Real Men Real Talk Live. We'll catch you next week. Peace and blessings. Do some self-care. Love you all.